Star Wars, best place for below average Star Wars.
Hello there, and welcome to the Star Wars Show, a UK-based Star Wars podcast with in-depth discussions and analysis sprinkled with some silliness. I am the Geordie Jedi Pete, and we are back with our third and final episode of our fantastic Star Wars Insider Celebrated series. You might ask what that is. Hopefully you've listened to episodes 1 and 2, where we had the fantastic contributors from the Star Wars Insider, Mr. Mark Newbold, and of course Brandon from Talking Bay 94. We interviewed those about contributing for the Insider. And we've got a very special episode coming up now, episode 3, with, we've covered the Star Wars Insider contributors. I wanted to deep dive the history of the Insider, and who better to do that with? Probably the only Star Wars historian I know, to be fair, but definitely the best one I know. It is Cara DJ. Cara,
I'm
how are you?
good. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for asking me to come on and talk about this. I think it's a really fun topic, and there's so much in the history of Insider that is really, really cool. So, yeah, I'm so excited. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you very much for picking up the gauntlet and coming on to deep dive this. As I said off air, I've did a little bit of research, as in I know a few things I want to point you towards, Cara, but then I'm going to let you do all the historic magic.
That sounds good. I was telling you before we started, I definitely am not like a complete expert, but I've looked at the timelines and I've spent a lot of time in the Internet Archive looking at the old issues. So yeah, I've got a rough skeleton of how it all came together, and it's pretty cool. It's very, very cool.
So we're not quite Star Wars Celebration levels of intel, but we're close.
Yes, exactly. That's where my mind spends 80% of its time. But I do also love fan history as a whole. And I think the reason I love Celebration so much is because it's like the place where we all gather, So it's all kind of related in a way.
It certainly is. So again, obviously we are celebrating Star Wars Insider. It is set to come to an end. Obviously in November, it was announced on StarWars.com that after more than 200 issues, Star Wars Insider will end its current run in 2026, which we are now in. And the last issue is set to come out this week, actually, I believe. And yes, just to give a quick run through, so Star Wars Insider is obviously the official Star Wars magazine. It began in 1987 as the official magazine of the Lucasfilm fan club and was renamed in 1994 in the States anyway to coincide with the release of Star Wars TIE Fighter, which I believe was a video game. Its contents include stories, articles relating to the Star Wars universe, letters, and fans newsletter banter tracks, which has a big thing to do with its beginning. And we also get some fiction in there as well. Its final issue will be number 237. And yeah, Cara, I suppose, before we dive into some of the historical facts, what interactions have you had with the Star Wars Insider over the years?
I feel like it's always been something that if I see it at the grocery store, it's like, I'm just going to buy it. I've never subscribed. I don't know why, but I usually would just buy it off the newsstand. And also in a couple of years ago, I guess when it was still pandemic times, I was sharing a lot of my collage art. I was making like character collage art, and a couple lovely people sent me a bunch of issues that they like were looking to get rid of or just didn't want anymore. They had doubles. So I kind of regret it, but I did cut most of them up into pieces to use in art, which like is a good thing because it made some really cool stuff for I had a Star Wars art journal that I filled up. And also I've used some of it in the zine, and then I've used it also I also made a little mini zine that I mailed out a couple years ago that was like pretty much only pictures from these old issues of Insider. Now when I think back on it, I'm like, oh my God, why did I cut those up? I had such good they're not like rare or anything. You could easily get them on eBay, but I kind of wish I had kept them in one piece, but I did cut them to shreds, which was very fun because there's so much good stuff, especially the prequel era. I feel like the pictures and all the stuff in there was just so good to use in collage and everything. But besides that, I mean, I was in Insider once. I believe it was ooh December of 2022. There was an article that talked a little bit about fanzines, and I was so lucky that they put a few pictures of my zine in there, which and being in Insider is like I feel like that's kind of a surreal moment for anyone that it happens to, but that was so exciting. So I have like 2 or 3 copies of that issue. But besides that, I mean, I've always loved it. I always love looking at it. I love seeing people who are featured. I think it really shines when it comes to interviews, especially um, that some of the most amazing interviews in all of the history of Insider have been with the behind the scenes people, and obviously with almost all of the actors I would think they've talked to at this point. Um, but I love reading the all the behind the scenes and interviews in Insiders. Probably my favorite thing.
Well, it certainly is fantastic, and I know what you mean about collecting them. For me, I always hand mine out. So after I've read it, I have some friends who sort of like Star Wars, not into it as much as I am, but like I'll pass it around and sort of it'll go around the friendship group or it'll go around the work
Right.
office. It eventually comes back to me. Maybe it's a bit tattered at that point, but other people have read it and enjoyed it, which I think it's always cool that you can pass that information on by just handing it to somebody or leaving it somewhere. I think it's a cool thing
Mhm.
that Star Wars Insider comes to an end and we enter this sort of well, not enter. We are in this digital age, I suppose, where that's more difficult. I think there's something nice about handing somebody a Star Wars Insider rather than like sending somebody the link to an article online,
I
if that makes
agree.
sense.
I agree. And I have definitely considered collecting it before, but I've always kind of stopped myself just like I can't go down that road. And also I would be so tempted to cut them up for collage. But yeah, I mean it's like it's so sad that it's coming to an end, but I guess like on a practical end I do understand because obviously digital everything's happening so fast and um I'm honestly surprised that it lasted as long as it did, and I think that's a testament to the people who write the articles, the people who do the interviews, the people who contribute the fiction, and all the amazing people who work on the magazine. I think really the only reason, one of the main reasons that it must have lasted this long is because of um, how great they are and their passion for the content and for Star Wars.
Certainly is. I think you've hit the nail on the head. It is indeed down to the passion, the drive, and just the absolutely great
Mhm.
work of those individuals who contribute to that magazine and those individuals who run the magazine is why it's gone this long and why it's getting sort of a huge celebratory blowout this month with its final issue. So its current history, obviously, it is produced by Tainted Magazines. That was announced at Star Wars Celebration 6, I believe. Sorry, not 6. Star Wars Celebration 4. I need to read my Roman numerals better than that. Yeah, Celebration 4, Star Wars Insider relaunched under the new publisher Titan Magazines. It's a bit different in Europe, so Star Wars Insider is not delivered to Germany, as Germany has its own licensed publication, Star Wars
Oh,
Official Magazine.
interesting. I didn't know that.
It's published quarterly there instead of bi-monthly, and it features many articles and short stories taken from the Insider. And it was the same in the UK. So when I was a sort of a child and a teenager, we got the Star Wars the official magazine here in the UK, and it wasn't until 2007 that and that was when Titan took over the Star Wars Insider. They merged it with the UK Star Wars magazine, and we got the same thing. So I don't know if you knew
I
that, or
didn't
maybe
know
that's just
that.
a European
No,
fact for you, Carl.
that's really interesting because I know that Titan is a British publisher, right? Yeah. Mhm.
Yes, I believe so. Yeah.
Cool.
So Titan produced that UK Star Wars magazine.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, so once they started doing the Insider, they merged it into 2007. And then Germany, I believe, still gets its own official magazine until
Wow.
now, which is the same content almost as the Insider, but they get it quarterly instead of bi-monthly, so it's probably a bigger issue. But it's everyone has the same need, but we get it in different ways, I suppose,
Yeah,
across the
that's
world.
true.
I want to dive into the first incarnation of the Star Wars Insider, though. So I believe issues 1 to 22 were produced by Lucasfilm themselves, and it was, of course, the Lucasfilm Fan Club magazine, which incorporated something called a banter tracks. But I'll let you take us away on
Well,
the journey of
honestly,
that.
it goes back. In my opinion, I think that this is all connected to what Insider became. But honestly, it started back in 1978 in January with the official fan club newsletter, which was originally just called Star Wars Official Fan Club. I don't even think it used the word newsletter, but there were 4 of those from 1978, basically all in 1978. And in the second issue, they had a contest to pick the name of the newsletter. And that was when the name Bantha Tracks came into the mix. So that was the newsletter from issues 5 to 35, which was basically from 1979 to 1987. So it ended with sort of that 10th anniversary celebration. And that was Bantha Tracks. And then at that kind of they announced that the fan club was going to take a break in issue 33 of Bantha Tracks, but it's kind of interesting because it ended up coming back at the end of 1987, so it didn't really take that long of a break. But and then that was when it came back with the Lucasfilm Fan Club magazine, and they announced the launch of the Lucasfilm Fan Club magazine at the Starlog 10th anniversary convention, which is colloquially known as Celebration Zero. And that was the first magazine was number 1, and then numbers 1 through 22 were Lucasfilm Fan Club magazine. And then in 1994 was issue 23, which became Star Wars Insider. That was when they named it. Insider was in 1994. And I always wonder if people look for issue number 1 of Star Wars Insider because it's sort of similar to Star Wars, which is kind of cool because, like, obviously the first Star Wars is episode 4, and the first Star Wars Insider is issue 23, which is kind of kind of funny. So if you were looking for issues 1 through 22 of Star Wars Insider, you're not going to find it because it was called Lucasfilm Fan Club magazine. So yeah, it started with the official fan club newsletter that became Bantha Tracks, and then that became the Lucasfilm Fan Club magazine, and then that became Insider. And Bantha Tracks ended up sort of reforming as a feature within Insider, which was talking about like fan contributions and fan events and fan stories and things like that. So it still kind of lived on in that way. But that's sort of the whole growth. It was tied to the fan club until it just became sort of its own entity as a magazine.
It's almost like comic books. Like you could look for the first appearance of Spider-Man, or you could get Spider-Man number 1, and they're very different
Exactly,
things.
that's true. And on it's funny because Bantha Tracks is the same way. Bantha Tracks started with number 5 because 1 through 4 was that official fan club newsletter. So I like that. I like that they don't start over with number 1. They just went from where they were. It just is. It's a very Star Wars thing to do.
It is indeed. That's mix all the numbers up and let's tie all these things together, but not necessarily in a linear way.
Exactly.
Very
Yes.
Star Wars. George will be
Yeah,
proud.
and when the Lucasfilm Fan Club came into the picture in 87, they were calling it the Lucasfilm Fan Club because at that time, I mean from 87 to 97 there was very very little Star Wars beyond books and what was Shadows of the Empire, right? Is that it? And so there wasn't a lot going on, but Lucasfilm had Indy, obviously, Willow, Tucker, and that kind of stuff. So they were kind of talking about Lucasfilm projects, and then when the special editions were announced in 94. Yeah, 94. That was when they knew Star Wars was going to come back. So that was when they brought the name Star Wars back into the mix, which is kind of fun.
And it stayed Star Wars Insider till the very end. Obviously, we've had different publishers, so I believe after Lucasfilm it was Fantastic Media,
Yes,
is that
and
right?
that's Dan Madsen. That's he was part of the fan club and also is a huge member of or a huge figure in Star Trek fandom history as well. And he ran the Star Trek fan club, and he's awesome. But yeah, so that was Fantastic Media.
And then from Fantastic Media, that's issue 23 to 50. And then 51 to 61, we go to a new era with Wizards of
That's
the
true.
Coast. Probably most famous for making Pokemon cards originally, but they make the Star Wars Insider for 10 episodes, or 10 issues even.
And they also ran Celebration for that time as well.
How many celebrations did Wizards
Oh,
run?
that Wizards did. I mean, it was definitely 2 and 3, and then I know Gen Con comes into the mix at one point. I have to kind of nail down that exact flow of hands that it exchanged from, but I know definitely number 2, and I'm pretty sure number 3 as well.
I think that's part of the deal. You can come and run Star Wars Insider and publish that, and you'll also get to do Star Wars
It must have been
celebrations.
something like that, yeah.
After Wizards of the Coast, issues 62 to 76 are published by Piazzo Publishing. I
Right.
don't really know much about
I've
Piazzo
heard that
Publishing.
name. Mm-hmm.
And then issues 77 to 92 are published by IDG
Ooh,
Entertainment,
yes.
which I believe is an American company. And then after that, issues 93 to 237 to the very end are published by Titan Magazines. And they've had it for the longest amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
They've probably had it during the most Star Wars type of things happening. You know, Clone Wars, new trilogies, spin-off movies, all the video games, live action TV series. You know, they've had it during the probably this golden age of Star Wars, if you want to call it that. And they've had it for the most amount of time, and they've probably done the most with it.
Right.
And yeah, what's your thoughts on? You know, it's moved around quite a lot. Then when Titan get it, Titan keep hold of it for a very long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, they really did. And like you said, there was so much happened, but also so much changed in that time that they've had it. So that must have been a real roller coaster to be on.
No, it certainly was. You mentioned Dan Masden. I believe he is back for the final issue. I'm not
Yes.
sure what he has done in the final issue, but he does have an article
I
in there.
believe so. I think I saw him as one of the contributing authors, which is awesome because Dan used to write the editor's letter, and he used to also do the prequel update with Rick McCallum, which was a huge part of Insider for all of the prequels, really, but especially for the Phantom Menace. And the first prequel update was actually in like 1995, which is kind of crazy, but he started back then, and then it became the place that really showed a lot of the prequel stuff for the first time, like a lot of pictures and stuff like that, and then interviews with the cast like before the movie came out, and the prequel update was a huge deal.
I love people forget just how, like, you think about Star Wars now and how everything's a secret. Like people forget that Revenge of the Sith had like a live
Oh my
webcam on set
god.
for some
Yeah,
of it,
I
didn't
think
they?
about that. I think about that all the time. But yeah, I think it was in 2003, and from Australia, they had a live webcam from the set of Revenge of the Sith, and it was taking a picture every few seconds. So it wasn't like that's the other thing, is like it wasn't like live video. It was just like a picture, a picture, like that, like sort of like that. And it could be anything. Like I've seen there's very few stills. I know there are people who have them saved on hard drives and stuff like that, but you definitely like really have to dig for them, because if you go back and try to look for them on the web archive or Wayback Machine, most of the photo links will be broken, but you'll see like them building the sets or them putting together a Wookiee costume or filming some of the scenes. It was like a huge thing that was the first place that people saw Hayden's hair, like the long hair, and that was a huge deal. And then also the crew used to kind of like mess with mess with the fans with the camera. Like I was reading blogs once, like old blogs, and they were talking about a crew member like held up a sign that like said something, and they were trying to decode what they said. It's crazy. It really is crazy, because also like I think about that a lot with with the first celebration, is that all the guests were Phantom Menace and they were technically not allowed to talk about their role in the movie, but at the same time, like I think the illustrated like the screenplay came out like before the movie, and the novel came out before the movie. So it's like they're not supposed to spoil anything, but we're being a little loose with the spoiling, especially Qui-Gon's noble end on the soundtrack, which is legendary, of course.
No, that is. I was about to say that. Yes, Qui-Gon's will end on the soundtrack
It's
that
just
was released
insane.
about a week early before the
Isn't
movie
that
came out
just it's
here
like
in the UK.
crazy to
And
think
it was
about? Like, what if the soundtrack for Mando and Grogu, we're recording this on May 3rd. What if the soundtrack for Mando and Grogu came out this week and it said like Mando's noble end or something? Like that would be crazy.
It is crazy, and it's like I'm glad that I was a like in 1999. I was 10, so although I did get the soundtrack late, I wasn't like clamoring for it
Exactly.
beforehand. So as a child, I wasn't aware of that, but like I know now as an adult, like I do buy things as they come out. So I would have, if that soundtrack was available early, I would have checked it out,
Of
like as an
course,
adult.
yeah.
So therefore, I would have had it spoiled for me,
It's
definitely.
crazy. And also, speaking of like that hyperspace webcam and everything, I feel like a lot of insiders history kind of ties to the internet too, with like what it was sharing and the speed of news. And then I would say probably around 96, 90, 95 might be a stretch, but 96, 97, that's when these fan sites are starting to appear, and they're dropping news like every day. They've got new stuff to say, and but they were still looking to insider, even though they were plugged into the internet. Like you'll still see them talking about insider on those old fan sites, which is really interesting. And also it was a insider was a place to shop as well.
No, it certainly was. When you think about obviously its origins to where it is now, what do you think it means to the Star Wars fandom, like Star Wars Insider?
What I think one of its biggest influences was in those years, I would say, before the special editions, but even during that time, and then obviously leading up to the prequels, one of the things that they really leaned into was was the smaller characters and the background characters and the glup shittos, if you will. And I think a lot of that was thanks to Dan Matson and the people who were working on the Insider in those early days, and John Bradley Snyder, and they loved to, like, there was an interview with John Hollis talking about Lobot. There was, and that I think is was kind of revolutionary at the time, because they knew that that's what fans enjoyed, and that we cared about everybody who was in Star Wars, and we still do, certainly. I mean, if you're in any Star Wars project, you can come to either Celebration or even the smaller events. You can do those gigs for the rest of your life, because we love everybody who's involved with Star Wars in any way. So I think they really leaned into that. A really great example of that is how they found John Morton, who played Dak in Empire Strikes Back. There was an article, and I don't have on hand which issue it was in, but it was talking about all of the X-Wing pilots and trying to find all the actors and identify all the actors. And it wasn't as easy to do as it would be now with IMDb and all the websites and things like that. So they had to kind of really dig for to identify who all these actors were, and they weren't sure who played Dak. They couldn't find him, and somebody, or they couldn't get in touch with him. I think they might have known his name, but they couldn't get in touch with him, something like that. And someone read the magazine who happened to know John Fast Morton and reached out to him and got him in touch with the Star Wars people, and with the insider people, and he didn't know that anybody would care. I talked to him when I went to Rebel Scum in August of last year. I did a little interview with him, and he said it was so crazy that he's only in the movie for a very short amount of time. He didn't realize that people would want to see him or want to talk to him. And then he went on to become a part of fandom and to go to a ton of events, and including Celebration One. And that is all thanks to Insider and its care for everybody who's a part of Star Wars. And I think that we all really carry on that legacy now, like when you see someone, when you think of like the running of the hoods at Celebration with Wilrow Hood, or you think of like the people cosplaying like the pink shorts boom operator and things like that, those things that we love that are they're kind of silly, but it's like such a part of our fandom. I think a lot of that has its roots in Insider and the way that they honored everyone who was involved, even if they had a small part. And also they always acknowledged and loved the silliness of things. So that's what I think of when I think of its contributions to fandom, is those early 90s days when it was really making those connections and leaning into that kind of topic. I think that's so underrated as a effect that it had.
I've interviewed Mark Newbold and, of course, Brandon from Talk to Me 94 in the previous two issues, and they talk about how Star Wars Insider, what it meant to them and how it influenced them to sort of be involved in fandom, to write articles, to create podcasts, looking into not just Star Wars fandom, but also like how Star Wars is made, the behind the scenes of it all. A big influence, and then they ended up coming around full circle, actually then contributing to the magazine. Obviously, Cara, you do have the Into the Larger World zine. How does, and obviously you have the podcast as well, amongst other things, obviously Star Wars Celebration, and how you historically look at the history of Star Wars Celebration, and how you not just do all the hard work, but then how you log that, and then how you present that information. Like the Star Wars Insider, not saying it was like the exact reason why you decided to do that, but like, has it had an influence?
It's definitely a part of the history of Celebration in a huge way. Especially, my main research is into Celebration 1 as of now, at least. And when I ask people about fans who attended, I always ask them, my first question is, how did you hear about Celebration? And I would say probably 85 to 90% of them say it was through Insider. So that's really cool, because the website did exist at the time, but fans were still getting their news from Insider. So that's very cool. And as far as fanzines, I mean, they're not really related, but there is kind of like a spirit there, I think, because in fanzines this is beyond Star Wars, this is all of fanzines, there was something called LOCs, or locks. So it's a letter of comment, and it would be a place where an area of the zine where you could write in and you could say what you thought about. Usually they would talk about the previous issue of the zine, and then they would also talk about like speculation, or they would talk about different things like that. And Insider has always had that. They've always had a section for letters from fans. I think in the early days it was called Rebel Rumblings, and then I think it's really just always been present, maybe more so in the older days. But and usually they would comment on the previous issue of Insider, or they would talk about something else, but they would talk about like either commenting on an article that was in there or what they liked about it, or and then also talking about like things that were just happening in fandom. So that does really echo from fanzines into Insider, which is really cool. It's just more of like a, an officially sanctioned big budget version as opposed to somebody just making it on their copy machine. Um, but yeah, I love that that kind of relationship that they have with each other. It's just like it gives a voice to the fans, even if it's in a smaller area of the magazine. It still is a presence. It's like a way for fans to feel a little bit of an ownership or a little bit of a connection to Insider and its contents, and then it makes you look forward to it more. And also as a historian, I mean, all of those letter sections from all the way back in Lucasfilm Fan Club magazine until 230 bajillion issues later, those are now all historical records, at least to me. um it shows not only it really shows what was going on in the fandom at that time and what people were talking about, what they were thinking about. Of course, you can find that online, but websites, they say what's on the internet is forever, and to a degree that is true. But as someone who is digging for stuff all the time, that isn't that isn't always true, especially with photographs. Those links break fast, and when that's lost, it's kind of devastating because then it's just like, you just can't ever get it back if it's not there anymore. But for those photos that were submitted or those letters that were submitted to Insider that made it into print, I mean, that stuff is forever and remains a historical record, which I think is super, super, super important.
It certainly is. And as you said there, it is issue number 237 that is released in this first week of May that will end Star Wars Insider. Is there a hole perhaps that is left once it does finish?
I think there is in a way, but it is hard because obviously the internet and social media and podcasts and fans are communicating in so many more accessible ways now. So, but I do think that it's a loss because it's an institution. So it's an important part of not only Star Wars fandom history, but Star Wars history as a whole. So there is definitely a loss there. Um, and it's sad to see it go. Like I said, it's like I understand it, but it doesn't make it hurt less. And I actually didn't know this, but there was and maybe I don't know if you've heard of this, but there was a newsletter that went out via email called Homing Beacon. It was like from 2000 to 2011. Does that sound familiar to you?
It
Yeah,
does
there were like
indeed.
238 of those. So, I you're able to find some of them, but it's the same thing. If it's not it's like this weird thing of like, does the internet make things more permanent or does it kind of do the opposite? I don't know. It's like, so I think that there could be a loss there as far as just having like that physical record, but I think it just means it's on us now to make sure that those things live on. Because when they changed the website, which I'm not sure exactly what year that was, but when the website was there was a point where the website shifted, starwars.com, and it a lot was lost with like the loss of hyperspace and all that. So, and again, you can see some of it through the Wayback Machine, but you cannot see all of it. So I think that's one of the things about Insider that will live on, is that it's a physical record of things. And I think that could be a loss if we don't do what we can to continue to preserve our history, the fandom history, the Star Wars history. We don't let those articles that are only posted on the .com get lost. Um, it's a little intimidating, like, but I do love to know that all those interviews that were in Insider, all that fiction that was in Insider, it's there forever because even if you got to go on eBay or whatever, somebody's got a copy, you know? So that's good to know. And I feel like it could be a loss if we don't kind of stay alert and try to keep some kind of record that can be kept beyond the internet, or at least that we keep paying for the hosts for the websites so that we don't lose them.
No, I think you're absolutely right there. I think a few things for the Star Wars Insider for me. I think number one, and this goes back to when it was the official magazine here in the UK as well, before it became Insider. But when I saw that on stands, like in either in the shop or on newsstands, that was me. That was for
Yes.
me and for my friends. And you felt seen. You would buy it, you would enjoy it, you would read it multiple times. If I had posters, you'd stick them on the wall. For me, I wasn't cutting bits out of it to make scenes like yourself or collages, but I would cut out, like, if there was a big image in there though that could like stick on my wall, I would do that though.
Sure.
Absolutely. And we had something here in the UK where in our comprehensive schools, or that would be similar to high schools in America, I suppose, you would back your books.
Sure,
So
we
you
did
would
that too.
you would
Yeah.
get like, and obviously for me it would be a case of, okay, I've got an old issue of Star Wars magazine here. Let's see which characters I can cut out and wrap the book in, so that I've got a lovely Obi-Wan Kenobi or Mace Windu book
That's
here.
awesome. Yeah. Yeah, we did that too. I feel like I usually used shopping bags to do it, but like the paper shopping bags, you know. But that's true. It's like the being able to have like that torn out poster or whatever. It's like that's always special. And I don't know where you'll get that now. I guess you just gotta print it out yourself.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it?
Yes.
I think, yes. And I think, but you look at how things are going in with tech. I think I mentioned it in one of the previous episodes, but I was listening to a conversation with the the head of the New York Times,
Mm.
and they're essentially saying that we are essentially now the Wordle company, as in, like, we produce Wordle, those type of games. That's what people pay for, and that allows us to then do the news. Still, if we didn't have that avenue, we might have had to shut the paper
Wow.
down. But we're basically the Wordle company that we use to generate the money to produce the news that we put out there, that we feel is our calling in life, to put that news out. But without the Wordle side of it now, the New York Times would probably fail, is basically what he
Wow.
was saying. How they've had to change with the times, introduce that Wordle thing, which is fun, don't get us wrong. But then when you hear him say things like that, it is like, wow, is that really how far we've come as humanity? But it is indeed. And I think, I'm not sure on the Star Wars Insider sales currently, but like I said, the younger generation are very much like, everything's on a tablet, everything's on a
Mm.
smartphone. TikToks are, attention spans are smaller. People consume media in smaller tidbits
Hmm.
now, quick videos or quick audio clips, whatever it is. So to pick up a magazine and spend a few hours reading it, like that type of thing in the future generations isn't happening. So, maybe it is time for it to come to an end before it sort of starts making losses. I think what is great though is that I don't think, and I haven't heard anything, and we haven't heard anything announced, but it can always come back as like a special
Yeah,
version, whether
that's
it's
true.
twice a year. Yeah,
Yeah, or maybe like when
and
Starfighter comes out, there'll be a special Starfighter issue or something like that. That I would love that, like a special edition for either a specific topic, but then it could still have those really great interviews and behind the scenes info that it's so beloved for. That could be great. And then everybody would be clamoring for it because we'll miss it, you know?
absolutely. So I think, take Starfighter. You could do the Starfighter version where it has sort of interviews with the cast and crew, artwork, pictures from the
Concept
movie. It
art.
could have tie-in fiction as well.
Sure.
Um, And you can also do that for anniversaries. So, if there's an anniversary coming up, right? Well, guess what? The Insider's back for the anniversary of Attack of the Clones, where we're going to maybe show some of our articles that have already been written in past Insiders about it, but also may have some new articles as
I think
well.
that's a great idea. I really hope they do something like that. And and for the record, I mean, I don't mean to besmirch the .com at all. Like there are a lot of great interviews and articles on there as well, written by a lot of the same people, and that stuff is all great. But from what I experienced just having to dig through the Wayback Machine, how many times I get that 404 page error with the Death Star as the zero. Like I just get scared that it's going to be gone. Um but yeah, no, I love that idea, like, because they already do like sort of special editions of the magazine and things like that. Um and that's kind of a popular thing, I feel like, with magazines. Like there'll be a Taylor Swift one or a BTS one or whatever. So I hope that they definitely consider something like that, because I mean, I know I would buy it for sure.
Same here indeed. I think when you think about, like, yeah, just, magazines, print-based media, it is
Mm,
winding down. The fact that this has gone so long is a testament to those involved, but also the power of Star Wars, I think, and the power of a generation, I think.
mm,
So one thing I loved about StarWars.com was when they did the Star Wars show, which I don't know how many years that lasts for, but it's sort of a weekly YouTube show. They break down the Star Wars news. There'd be a bit shenanigans, involve some sketches. It was quite fun. It was quite
I loved it.
informative. I really enjoyed it. Very entertaining. And then obviously, but that did come to an end where I feel Insider came well before it and has lasted long after
Yeah.
it as well. Obviously, it is coming to an end now, but so that testament to sort of the people who are buying Insider still, have been probably the same people who were getting it 10 years
That's
ago.
absolutely true. Oh, bringing up the Star Wars show. I loved the Star Wars show. I remember when I was living in the city, I used to look forward to it every week when it came out. I would save it for my lunch break. Ugh, yeah. I miss that a lot. But that's another thing where, like, at least those are on YouTube, so they're recorded for posterity. That's a good thing. Because I feel like I think of everything in like a historical frame. And another thing that's really, I kind of mentioned this earlier, but another thing that I love that those early issues of Insider captured is through the Jawa Trader. Even before the Jawa Trader, in Lucasfilm Fan Club magazine, they were selling some collectibles within the magazine, but Jawa Trader came along with that first issue of Insider, which was number 23. And I use that as a resource all the time in my celebration research, and just being able to see like what they were selling, what people were buying, and also seeing like the different designs of things. And it's a great way, like if you were doing research on some type of figures, because there were so many like exclusives, like fan club exclusive figures and things like that, or like fan club exclusives that came with the purchase of a figure, all those kinds of things. And that is all captured in Insider in those Jawa traders. So um, I think that's really great too. And it's also such a time capsule of like when you used to shop from a magazine.
No, it certainly is. That would be the first time you'd see something that you really
Right.
wanted. I remember certainly as a child and a teenager. Is there anything you've ever seen in Jawa traders that you've then decided that you definitely need to
Well,
own?
recently, I mean, yes, absolutely. I feel like most of it would probably be pretty hard to find, but the things that always get me are the t-shirt designs. Oh my god, some of those old t-shirt designs, it's like, why don't you do those again now as like a vintage throwback? I would buy it in a second. Oh my god, some of those, like either the special edition designs or like obviously the prequel t-shirts with like liquid blue and everything. Just with the tie dye and just endlessly fantastic. But what I mostly use it for is for celebration, especially celebration one, because almost everything, if not everything, that was available at celebration one as merchandise ended up being available in Jawa Trader. And some of it was in there until all the way up to celebration 2, like into 2002, it was still in there. But there was one thing that was really cool that I did get on eBay recently. They had, obviously, celebration badges are just an institution of their own at this point. They're these little tiny works of art, and the celebration one badges are totally iconic, and I own most of them. I don't know if I have the full set, but I have a good amount of them. But they did something in Insider, I think it was late 99 into 2000, where they made more of them, more of the badges, but they were just like insider exclusives. There was like a Mara Jade one, there was a Mace Windu one, there was a Darth Vader one, an Aura Singh one, which is really cool. And they're made in the same style as the Celebration 1 badges, but it was something you would get with the purchase of a figure. And I did end up buying them on eBay a couple weeks ago. I don't have the Mace Windu one yet, but I have the rest of them. But I talked to John Bradley Snyder as part of my uh, research into Celebration when he was previously the editor of Insider for a time, and also contributed to Lucasfilm Fan Club magazine. And he said that when he kind of had the idea for the badges, he was like, it's something that people will like the design, and then it's something that we could sell later. He had that in his head even at the time. And then they had the idea to further make even more of them, even though they weren't related to Celebration, but in that same style. And that's probably one of my favorite finds, because when I first saw them, I was like, well, what the heck are those? Because they're not from Celebration. They have totally different characters, but they're the same exact style. I was like so confused. But so kind of solving that puzzle and figuring it out and then finally buying them was very fun. And if you look at issues from like, if you look at any issue from 2000, you'll see them, the little free badges that came with a figure purchase. So that's probably my favorite Jawa Trader story, but there's so much good stuff in there.
Well, there certainly is something about. So I'm a big professional wrestling fan, and something that I've noticed now is that you might watch interviews with professional wrestlers from 20 years ago where they're telling a story, and then you will see them telling the same story now, and it's changed. It's slightly different, and I think that happens to everybody, right? And not just wrestlers, but everybody in all walks of life. You know, if you tell a story down the line, you know, you might have a different perception of it. You might feel differently as you grow as a person and as you understand things differently. And I think what's great about publications, and certainly Star Wars Insider, is that the articles are of the time, so it can't really be warped or changed. So, you know, if there's an article about Attack of the Clones and Attack of the Clones came out, you know, it's very much, you know, that's not going to be changed. That's there to read as it was intended, like at the time. And I think it's very important that we have that, so that we can't have a revisionist history of things. If that makes sense.
I absolutely agree, and I think I see that a lot in my research as well. People telling the same story different ways, or things, you know, kind of getting a little lost in the sauce. So you're absolutely right. Yeah, I think probably one of the most precious things about Insider is how many amazing interviews they were able to do, especially with so many people who are no longer with us, you know. And it's so wonderful that we have some of those conversations. Like, there was an incredible, I don't know which issue it is, but it was the Empire Strikes Back anniversary issue. It has like really cool cover, and it had a really cool style all throughout it. And they have an awesome interview with Irvin Kershner in there. And so many great interviews. Oh my gosh. Like, if you went back through and made a list of everyone that was ever interviewed in Insider, it would be, you'd be speechless with how many people they were able to talk to. And I totally agree that that's a very, very precious library of interviews that are there.
My second point would be, if you look at, obviously, its origins of, you know, the Lucasfilm Fan Club magazine. I think fan clubs in general now, like, you don't really hear about them. I think I'm not quite sure if Hyperspace was a fan club, but it was certainly that type of thing, and obviously that Hyperspace came to an end. Obviously, Star Wars does not have one currently, and, you know, obviously Inside has lasted beyond Hyperspace closing down, I suppose. But when you think about how fan clubs have come to an end as well, you can sort of see why what's happening, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say.
It's hard because fan clubs, I can kind of see why there's not a need for them anymore, because there are so many places to get information, so you wouldn't really need it for that. And, you know, obviously merchandise and stuff like that is so widely available on so many different levels, not to mention fans making their own merchandise at this point, so there's not really a need for it in that way either. But there was something kind of precious about a fan club and about being like a member of something. There were so many cool things, and hyperspace was a fan club. You were right about that. It was the hyperspace fan club, at least at the beginning. But they, at a few celebrations, they would have these things called fan club breakfasts, where you could go to this breakfast and they would have a bunch of the random people, cast members and people from behind the scenes there. And I've seen lots of pictures of those. And that's just a really cool thing, the fact that that happened. And yeah, I feel like it was a way to have some kind of a community, like you meet somebody there in the fan club, you have that in common. It's just a cool like badge of honor almost.
No, it certainly is, and it certainly
Mhm.
certainly was. But the times do indeed change, as Bob Dylan would say. I think I'm coming to the end of sort of my thoughts and questions on the Insider. I don't know if there's anything we haven't covered that you would like to talk
I
about,
don't think
Cara.
so. I wanted to talk about Jawa Trader. uh no, I don't really think so. I feel like we covered the most of the stuff that I was thinking of.
I think we've done a great job. We've talked about the origins and sort of the unofficial origins of, it's gone for 237 issues, but actually, if you want them all, you'll need to buy more than that, which is fantastic. Will you be picking up issue 237?
Absolutely. I know there's the one, I think it's a subscriber exclusive, maybe. The one that they made it so it looks like issue number 1 of the Lucasfilm Fan Club magazine with R2D2 and 3PO against the blue background. I think that might be the
Yeah.
subscriber issue, so I might have to wait and see if I can get that on eBay or something. But I will probably just pick up the regular newsstand issue as well. I mean, how can you not?
Also, I'm pretty sure that certainly here in the UK, you can go to titanmagazines.com and you can sort of you can buy back issues if
Oh,
they've got them in
okay.
stock.
Okay.
So maybe they will have the subscriber covers in stock. I'm not saying they do, but the best place to check is probably
Definitely. Yeah,
titanmagazines.com.
that's a good idea. Because I feel like that one, I've got to have that. I think I have to have that. I bought a few. I went to a comic show. It was like a little show, sort of locally, a little bit of a ways away from me last year. And this one vendor, he had a box and he had a ton of insiders, like from before the design change, which was like the first 23 issues. And or no, the first no, the redesign was on issue 32 when the logo changed, and that was for the special editions, but he had a bunch of the ones from before that. And whenever I see them at like a comic show or in a used bin, it's like I always got to buy them. So yeah, I feel like I might have to have that special cover, but I'm definitely going to go looking in the stores just for the regular one, because it's like, it's sad, but you gotta have it. It's a must-have keepsake, I think.
Definitely. As soon as I see one, I'm going to be buying it off the
Absolutely.
shelf, and hopefully my subscriber one will be arriving as well. I just want to go over the contributors of the final Insider. So we have Kristen Beaver, Mark Newbold, who was, of course, part of our episode 1 on Celebrating the Insider. We have Jay Stobie. We have Brandon Wyanerty, who was, of course, the guest of our second episode of Celebrating the Insider. Dan Madsen, of course, very much the founder of the official Star Wars fan club and the first editor of the Star Wars Insider. Obviously, Dan very much, they're saying, is the reason why the magazine ever existed in the first place. And also Melissa T. Miller. So those are the contributors of the final Star Wars Insider as we know it. But as I said, I'm very hopeful. And I think it makes sense that the Insider does continue, maybe in a more limited, more collectible, more niche setup. and I hope that does happen, because I think there's definitely a desire from Star Wars fans. Love everything I just said. Collectible, niche, rare. Star Wars fans love all that. So if they do that, people will
I
love it.
totally agree. Yes, it'll make it even more of a keepsake. It could be like it's almost like an easy way, cuz obviously we have incredible behind the scenes books. We have the art of books that are just completely breathtaking, and all those different, like the visual dictionary and all those amazing encyclopedias and books that we get. But that could be a really cool way to put out something in the meantime, because usually those books take a long time. So yeah, I think that's a must. I think somebody call somebody and tell them.
Indeed. If anyone's listening, that is what you need to do. But yes, sadly, but also fondly, that we have, over 200 issues of Star Wars Society to go back and look at. It does come to an end. As you listen to this episode, it should be on sale. I believe it went on sale May the 5th, 2026, issue 237, the final issue of Star Wars Insider, which was, of course, the official Star Wars magazine. Cara, where can the people find you on social media? And also, I would love it if you would talk about what you are doing with your project as well.
Sure. So the best place to find me is always Instagram, Into a Larger World Project. That's me on Instagram. And I'm also on Patreon, just under Into a Larger World. And that's where I share a lot of the process of what I've been working on. And right now, my current madness, my current my current absorption project is an extended, it's not really a book and it's not really a zine, so I've been calling it a book zine, one word, about Celebration 1. So I've been researching this event, talking to people who helped make it happen, people who were there, going through and finding like pretty much as much of the whole story as I can, collecting photographs and newspaper articles and newspaper headlines, and trying to really tell the story of that first event as completely as I can. I'm calling it a complete-ish history, because it'll never be complete unless you talk to every single person who was involved and was there. That's the only way I would call it complete. But I'm working on that now. It's going to be over 70 pages. It's made by hand, with with paper and glue, as my regular zines are, but just kind of on a larger scale. And it's been a bit daunting, but just mainly because I have so much information I want to put inside. So I'm trying to narrow it down and make it more digestible. But I hope that in the end, it's going to be a really cool way to look back on what this event was like, how it all came together, what it was like to be there, and what the legacy was for it, moving forward into the celebration that we have now. So that's what I'm currently working on. I'm sharing a lot of the process over on Patreon. I share monthly updates, um, and a little bit like video process of me making it, and all my research blogs are over there as well. And hopefully it's going to come out this summer. I have a bit of a crazy month this month, but the next 2 months after that, I'm going to be like locking in to try to get it finished. In time for, actually, for Rebel Scum Con, which is coming in August. That's when I'm hoping it'll be done for. We'll see. But if you're interested in seeing more about that, definitely check out my Patreon. And on Instagram, I've been trying to share more and more of my celebration history research, the things I've found. And I also have a blog, which is celebrationdatabase.com, where I talk about specific things from celebration history and kind of take a bit of a deep dive. And if you're listening, and if you were at celebrations 1, 2, or 3, I would love to hear about it. I would love to see your pictures. So send me an email, into a larger world project at gmail.com. That's pretty much it. The podcast is like, it still exists. There's so many great backlogs of people that I've hung out with and talked to. It's the Into a Larger World podcast, but it's taking a backseat right now because really this book is the main focus of my life right now. So everything else is kind of paused, but there are a bunch of great interviews to check out that I've done in the past 3 years. So that's pretty much it.
Sounds like a lot, and it all sounds very exciting, and I'm excited to see more about this book that you've mentioned there. It sounds very exciting. And again, I just want to say, thank you, Star Wars Insider. Since 1987 all the way to now in 2026. 237 issues. You've brought us the Star Wars news, the interviews with the casting and crew. You've brought us Star Wars fiction. You've told us some big things about some of the biggest things in Star Wars, and you've told us some of the little things about the most tiniest things in Star Wars. But you were there for us on the shelves, making us Star Wars fans feel seen, that there was a magazine out there for us, and then also be giving us loads of awesome tidbits of information to deep dive on. That again allowed us to talk Star Wars and get really nerdy about Star Wars and enjoy it. And it will be missed. As I said before, hopefully it's available to sort of to come back here and there as it needs to, as new projects come out and as anniversaries are met. I would love to see a special edition versions of the Star Wars Insider, you could say, and I'm sure it will live on in one way or another. But yes, I want to say thank you to Mark Newbold for contributing on our first episode of celebrating the Star Wars Insider. Second, thank you to Brandon Y. Nerdy for doing episode number 2. And Cara, thank you very much for coming and being our resident historian for episode number 3.
Thank you for having me. And if you're listening and you have issues of Insider, keep them in good condition. Protect them, because it's historical record at this point. And, the first big chunk is on Internet Archive, which is a miracle, but that could go away at any time. That's just how Internet Archive works, sadly. So yeah, protect those issues because they are important historical records. Put it in a protective sleeve.
No, they are indeed. So, and if you see the latest one, definitely pick it up. Also, if you're struggling to find Star Wars Insider and you want it, as I said, go to titanmagazines.com. I am sure they'll be able to hook you up with a copy for some currency. But yes, Cara, thank you very much. Listeners, thank you very much. May the Force be with you all. And remember, always tell that to Cant Club.